Hi folks, Joey Ricard with tracksidescenery.com. Welcome back. This is the Spruce Coal Timber Railroad. This version of the layout is a series of portable module sections that provide an overall scenic representation of Appalachian West Virginia in the early days of logging and mining. These modules act as photographic dioramas and were built to be taken outside for natural light photography as well as for the purpose of being displayed at train shows. This version of the layout appeared on the cover and in the pages of O-Gauge Railroading's February-March 2016 edition, as well as in the pages of Model Rail over in the UK and Europe. While it can be a great achievement to complete a layout, I felt that it served no purpose if I couldn't share it with others. With that in mind, I set out to create a modular operational display layout that I could take to train shows for all to enjoy, while also showcasing some of our products. The biggest challenge in the design and construction was to incorporate all that I desire in a small space, but also allow the layout to be portable. While space in my workshop was plentiful, consideration had to be given to the allowable space in the trailer in which the layout would be transported. I planned to lay out scenes accordingly and constructed it to fit on sectional carded modules. Each module contains a specifically modeled scene and all blend together with natural appearance when joined together. Each module is built on a frame base and each module sits on a framed wooden cart. These carts have wheels for easy transport. The cart concept comes in handy, especially when the layout is displayed in an event venue with long travel corridors, such as hotels and conference centers. Additionally, the entire layout can easily be moved around by one person from trailer to setup site. All functional parts, including electronics, control panel, bridges, and all applicable pieces, are stored in the carts below. Now this is a good visual representation of what I was trying to do at the time. Of course, at the time I didn't have this program, and it's called SCARM, S-C-A-R-M, and it gives us the ability to design this in a digital CAD program. But at the time, I literally just laid out track on the table to see what I liked and see how it laid out. My goal was to add as much interestingness, I think that's a word, interestingness as I could in such a small space without it being too cluttered. And back and forth I went, but this is what I came up with. Each layout module is built separately and they are constructed on frames made of 1x4 lumber with stringers. The stringers were placed in a range so as not to block underneath access to the tortoise switch machines. On top of the frame sits a 1/4-inch plywood base with switch machine access holes. The height of the railhead is about 55 inches off the floor. The wheels are the basic screw-in type from the local hardware store and they're also adjustable. When the modules are placed together for setup, I use wooden dowels to align them initially, and then I use bolts and wing nuts to secure them. When it comes down to it, O-scale in a small space can sometimes be challenging in terms of track placement. The fact that I was using ON30 track and equipment helped, but it required a bit of experimentation and head scratching. In the end, I used my imagination to create a rural downtown area that flows nicely and provides a lot of operational opportunities. Track and turnouts are from Micro Engineering. They're ON30 gauge code 83. I used flex track for all areas that are not turnouts, and there's a minimum radius of 22.5 for curves on the scenic portion of the layout. There are a total of 10 powered turnouts on the front portion of the layout and 7 hand-thrown turnouts that are out of sight housed on the rear bridge sections. Powered turnouts are run by Tortoise brand switch machines and are controlled by a switch panel that I built from a small glass picture frame. I used Barrett Hill touch toggles behind a printed track diagram that I created from an image graphic. Scenery, my favorite. Now I'm not going to go into too much detail here because there's a bunch of other videos here on our channel where we discuss in detail the many methods I use for creating scenery. But while we're all here, the base of my scenery is constructed with vertically stacked blue insulation foam glued together with construction adhesive. And again, if you've seen any of our other videos, you know I use a wide variety of scenery materials. These materials are both from natural sources and commercially available products. Tying all the scenes together and creating a realistic sense of place was very important. As you can see, we used our very own trackside scenery backdrops to accomplish this. Having the physical scenery blend with the backdrops was the key. All of our backdrops were designed and implemented to work directly with the foreground scenery to give the effect of life beyond the layout. I always point out the interactive elements in the backdrops. They were used to create roads and streams that actually seemed like they went somewhere. Another one of my favorite things to do is scratch building and building structures. All of the structures on the layout are scratch built from wood and were derived from ideas I gathered from vintage photos. Some of the structures were built as model prototypes for structure kits that we once offered. None of the structures were built using actual known dimensions, and all were built to fit the intended spot in which they reside. The layout has a single point power connection for track power. We used the NCE DCC Power Pro system. Track power is coupled from module to module by quick disconnect plugs. In addition, all structures on the layout have interior lighting. Power for the lighting comes from a 12-volt power supply mounted underneath the layout. If you've ever come and seen us at a train show, you'll know that the layout has sound effects. On the far right of the layout, mounted in the shack, is a 2x2 speaker that plays a mix of natural sound effects. This sound originates from a CD player mounted underneath the layout on a shelf that provides looped ambient sounds that reflect birds chirping, water running, wind, and various other effects. All locomotives on the layout reflected a gritty backwoods and hard-working appeal, and all have been painted, weathered, and decaled with the Spruce Coal Timber logo and lettering. The locomotives feature DCC sound decoders mounted inside the locomotives or tenders. We used a mix of Bachmann ON30 280s, 460s, Shays, 440s. Rolling stock consisted of loaded and empty coal cars, box cars, flats, gondolas, and caboose. Caboose. A passenger combine train made its daily run across the layout, headed by a 280 and towing a slew of Bachmann coaches. This version of the layout provided a lot of action in and around the town of Slady Fork. There was no shortage of assignments for operators on the layout, and it wasn't uncommon to see 2 or 3 locomotives working separate jobs at the same time. Coal mine operations were centered around the Spruce Coal Tipple, located right in the downtown area. Empties were shuffled in, loads were dragged out and taken to a spot off the layout at the rear. A local train picked up and set out at the various industries along the line. On the west side of the layout is the Spruce Timber Company log reload, which is serviced daily by a Shay-powered log train that arrives from and disappears to the rear of the layout. I mentioned in a previous article that building this version of the layout was one of the most exciting model projects that I had done in many years. It's an understatement to say that this layout was an extreme challenge in terms of time and space, but ultimately it has multiplied that sentiment many times over. I chose to push my skills to the limit, and in the end it has rewarded me with many new friendships, new opportunities, and most importantly, the chance to share my adventures in model railroading with others. Thank you for sharing this walk down memory lane with me. This is Joey Ricard with tracksidescenery.com. Thanks for watching. See you next time.